Our next speaker is Terrell Gibbons. And just on a personal note, before I read his bio, we have people who email and say, I want to read a book, just one book, that will help me deal with issues in anti-Mormonism and such. Which book should I read? And I recommend Terrell Gibbons, By the Hand of Mormon. And I think that's an excellent book. His other book that's on the back, on the speaker table back there, has not been released yet, apparently. We're the first ones to have that book, so you can go home and show all your neighbors that you have the book before anybody else does, kind of like the Harry Potter books, I suppose. But let me read his bio. Terrell Gibbons was born in upstate New York, just the other side of Finger Lakes from Palmyra, and graduated from Brigham Young University. He did his graduate work at Cornell and the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill in intellectual history and in comparative literature. He has published articles on Greek aesthetics, literary theory, and European Romanticism, in addition to books in religious studies, including Viper on the Hearth, By the Hand of Mormon, and People of Paradox, A History of Mormon Culture, released in July 2007. Dr. Gibbons' presentation is from a work in progress, or it's just now printed, When Souls Had Wings, Premortal Existence in Western Thought. Dr. Gibbons is currently Professor of Literature and Religion and holds the James Bostwick Chair of English at the University of Richmond, where he has been named a distinguished educator and teaches courses in 19th century studies. He's written several books. You can find them on the speaker's table, and we're very pleased to welcome Dr. Terrell Gibbons.
Well, it's wonderful to be here this morning. Thank you for the invitation. Mormons, I think, can be too quick to see all inspired texts written previously to 1830 as potential proof texts, to see Jesus' ministrations to Mary and Martha as foreshadowing the home teaching program, and every sunken Mesoamerican hole in the ground as a baptismal font. We are too quick, in other words, to see these other systems and phenomena as deriving their value in proportion to their capacity to anticipate a restoration that we treat as full and complete. It is not. Prophets from Joseph Smith and Brigham Young to President Kimball have reminded us of that. Today I want to show how my own appreciation for and understanding of the pre-existence has been enriched and broadened by a comparative study of the idea and its myriad appearances in the history of philosophy, theology, and literature. What I have come to appreciate is this cardinal insight. If the restoration is not yet complete, then other traditions have much to teach us, not by way of confirming, let me repeat that, not by way of confirming, corroborating, or verifying the truths we already have, but by way of actually adding to the body of revealed doctrine that we call precious and true. The restoration is neither full nor complete. Brigham once said in reference to the keys of resurrection, "This is one of the ordinances we cannot receive here, and there are many more. It will be a great while after you have passed through the veil," said Joseph, "before you will have learned all the principles of the gospel." What if, instead of scrambling frantically to find explanations when Joseph appears to have borrowed from the Masons or Ethan Smith or Tom Dick, we instead see another possibility of Joseph actually practicing what he preached? As Brigham characterized his position, if you can find a truth in heaven, earth, or hell, it belongs to our doctrine. We believe it. It is ours. We claim it. It takes real humility and generosity of spirit to be taught. Our contemporary condescension in this regard was clearly foreign to a prophet who showed the world he could translate gold plates written in Reformed Egyptian and then hired a Jewish schoolmaster to teach him Hebrew. So as a believing Latter-day Saint, what do I bring to the study of pre-existence? Not much. Only a very skeletal understanding of the principle as taught by Joseph. In some sense, my identity is eternal. And before I was born, I existed in a form that included the capacity to make decisions and covenants. Not much more than that. What is the value or the power of this spiritual anthropology? Well, it means that I am a child of God, an eternal being. But what other value and power might a belief such as this embody? What might its persistence over thousands of years and across cultures and religions and traditions reveal about myriad other questions, longings, yearnings, riddles, and dilemmas that this belief responds to? I sometimes feel that Mormonism has the answer, but doesn't know the question. So what have I learned in this regard? The sheer bulk of the names who have espoused or taught or contemplated the doctrine has been a little astonishing, from the early rabbis and church fathers to Robert Frost, and a recent Nobel Prize laureate. In the 19th century, the idea was promulgated by some of the most influential theologians and preachers of the day. The idea produced book-length treatments and book-length refutations. It occupied debaters at the Concord School of Philosophy and filled the pages of religious journals in antebellum America. It characterized whole schools of philosophy, from the Cambridge Platonists to the American Transcendentalists, and appears in lesser-known American and Russian philosophical treatments as well. It is associated with a number of European mystics and European philosophers, from Hume to Locke to Kant. Hardly a romantic poet did not wax eloquent in its defense. Wordsworth, only the best known to Latter-day Saints among many. The sheer volume and brilliance and earnestness and tragic contexts of many of the participants in this tradition awoke in me the suspicion that this is a doctrine whose stakes and appeal and potential for philosophical and cultural work we have not even begun to appreciate. By philosophical and cultural work, I mean to indicate the approach the philosopher Nietzsche so brilliantly exemplified in his Genealogy of Morals, when he asked not, when he asked, what do we discover, if we don't ask, are the categories good and evil, soul and conscience true and transcendent, but rather if we ask, what function do these concepts serve historically? Whom and what do they benefit? What social and political dilemmas do they resolve? We seldom move beyond our excitement at finding reinforcement for our own truth claims to move to these interesting and vitally important questions. Latter-day Saints believe that the doctrine of preexistence was known to Abraham, and presumably earlier. In the West, at least, the idea is not attested to with any clarity before Plato, though there are tantalizing hints in Mesopotamian texts. And I'm going to turn to one of those now, an Akkadian poem written some 16 centuries before Christ, describes a council of gods convened to discuss the creation of man. To animate this new creature and make it capable of fulfilling tasks previously relegated to the gods, they resort to a drastic expedient. They sacrifice an entity called Way, because he is a god both divine and possessed of a spirit. Then they take of his blood and they pour it into the clay prototype that they have made, with the hope that this new creature called man will not recognize in himself his divine origins and thus aspire to be one of the gods. We see in this story both an important precursor to the idea of a human soul and a panoply of threads that will weave in and out of subsequent mythologies of that soul's origins and potential destiny. The very word human being in Akkadian is a composite of this name, Way, and the word for God, or divine nature. In other words, language and myth alike suggest that it was thought necessary, in order to create this species called man, to have recourse to a divine entity possessed of a spirit, and to unite this pre-existent divine aspect with a mortal created shell. The council approved the plan, and the process of creation began. As one text summarizes, to leave the gods idle in this place of happiness, Marduk created man. The exact wording of what happens next establishes a precedent, not just for the kind of dualism familiar to us in the West, but for a creation of a spirit and body that come into existence at different times. Conception, says the text, occurs as a deposit of this divine substance into a human prototype. So all the seeds for subsequent philosophical elaboration and theological controversy regarding the anthropology of the human soul are here. The spirit of man is specifically invoked as that which distinguishes him from other